There are too many wars already fought, and less talks about peace. People are talking about military might. People are talking about how they need to be strong. People are talking about how they want to grow. People are talking about how how they want to make progress. People are talking about how they want to make progress at the expense of the next people. People are talking about how they want to use the next girl, how they want to use the next guy in their relationship, how they just want to catch cruise. And you see how sad and we see how robotic we are becoming day in, day out, year in, year out. Because if you think you can ordinarily get to pretend to love a girl while you don't actually love the girl because you just want a couple of incentives from her and her life, and you think you can cheat on a guy and think the guy will not get to ordinarily know what is in your heart, which is a thing he ordinarily would not be able to do, and then you get to tell yourself, he doesn't know, and then you get to leave such a guy in the situation you get to leave him, and you get to leave the girl in the situation you get to leave her. What becomes of such a person in the long run is the cultivation of an agnostic way of looking at life. That ordinarily all humans are the same because we are a product of our experience. We are a product of genes and the levels of mutation and the levels of variation that have come down to us from thousands of years before now. And so you get to ask yourself, what becomes of these people who have come to experience distrust? The complication of things in the world continues to get complicated, and we sometimes don't really want to really look at things squarely as we ordinarily should be doing. A man like Saddam Hussein, has come down to history to be pointed as many things from the angle of him possessing nuclear weapons to the US getting to invade his country and then, getting to lay a whole lot of claims. He has come down to many persons as a saint. He has come down to many persons also as a bad guy. He has come down to be different things, and it is not easy to be a leader in a time of conflict, in a time of war, in a time of disunity, in a time where a particular country's interest seems to be very threatened, because when they look at you and when history gets to judge you from hindsight, it becomes very difficult to have a particular idea of what you actually stood for and what you actually were. And so different persons continue to hold varying and different opinions as it concerns the person of Saddam Hussein. But what there is there to take from this particular man's life is the fact that wars have not stopped. Wars have continued. Wars have been fought from Iran to Turkey, from Turkey to old Ephesus, from old Ephesus to currently Antalya, from there to the Great Canyon, down to Yugoslavia, down to the current day countries that get to be the reality of a place like that. And up until our modern times, up until Sudan, up until Congo, up until Syria, and different places around the world, even in our personal lives, we get to experience these battles, we get to experience this rage within us, and then we begin to ask ourselves, what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? What have we come to do? Have we come to slaughter people? Have we come to kill people? Have we come to kill ourselves? Have we come to deprive people of the possibility of ordinarily getting to feel loved, ordinarily getting to fall in love? Because we are gradually becoming robots. And it is a serious thing. It's a thing we sometimes don't even ordinarily want to be reminded about. We live in hard times. We live in sad times. We live in times where propaganda gets to like champion the day. We live in times when we see ourselves being so afraid of the cancel culture and what a hashtag can get to do to us. We live in times when people ordinarily want to live free without responsibilities, and one begins to ask himself, what entails responsibility, if not the fact that we get to curtail ourselves in relation to our conversations and dialogue with other persons? But that is not what geopolitics is in our modern time. That is not what living in our current day have come to be, and so we find ourselves continually channel our lives and our times and the ways we get to do things and our sense of business and our sense of um, political systems and ideologies towards the things that ordinarily get to benefit us the most, things that ordinarily get to benefit a particular country, regardless of whether the next country is ordinarily doing well or not. And so you find a country like Indonesia having sanctions as it concerns exporting the raw products of their mineral resources to foreign countries for proper manufacturing and refining, and then send back to them as finished product. Example of such products that have been sanctioned to get to send out of the country is a thing like nickel. And so you find a people who ordinarily should be self-sufficient, who quote and unquote are considered independent. They have suffered um, occupation and colonialism from the hands of Japan. They suffered from the hands of the Netherlands. They suffered from Holland, and down in modern times they are still suffering. I was having a conversation, a very unconventional conversation yesterday with a friend, and it was like it seems the world have just been in and about colonizing one another and colonizing each other. But it still holds water to say that a place like Indonesia, against all technological strides and against the advancement and development of the 21st century, still finds itself in the crossroads, in the waters of not coming to ordinarily and actually telling itself that it can function independently without the extra help of the next country, without the extra care and concern of the next colony across the other side. And so you find a place like France with its many colonies, even in the 21st century, and such colonies depending so much on a small country like France. You find these colonies almost being bottlenecked and being told, without France they cannot function, without their master they cannot grow. And you find the same thing happening in the many contracts and in the many agreements reached before granting the independence of a whole lot of African countries, the so-called francophone countries. And you begin to ask yourself, we are living in the 21st century, and at the same time it's like we're in the matrix. It's like we are caged. We are like held together. We are like in and about these levels of confusion as to what it ordinarily means to be free. We claim to know so much about human rights. We claim to know so much about the fundamental rights, the universal human rights. A thing that even when it was constituted, never constituted the entire world. Not everybody was actually in the convention that saw to it that the universal human rights came down to us as they now have become a thing regarded as universal. Not even the United Nations, when it was formed, the League of Nations, even not all countries were represented, and not even all countries are well represented in a thing like the UN in our times today. And so you see them go for meeting, you see them put on their fine jabs, and you see these representatives sit down there and pontificate as to what it takes to be human, what it takes to have life, what it takes to be alive. And you ask yourself, from here to here to here to here, how far? What are we meant to do? And in modern times, we've been hearing stories and echoes of things like nuclear weapons and nuclear war, and we think it's so far. We think it's not so close to us. We think it cannot happen in our time. We think nothing can be a problem in as much as it has not affected us until it hits us. And with the rise of artificial intelligence, we ordinarily don't know what is coming ahead. Because in the last 20 years of our technological strides and our advancements and our progress down this road, we have come to experience life in ways we never ordinarily imagined. We have come to send information across boards and across continents and across locations in distant time. We've come to send mails, we've come to send parcels, we've come to communicate in real time. You can almost want to even call it physical conversation, from video calls to audio calls to Zoom to Team, to all ways in which we've come to have webinars and conferences and conversations about ideas, transatlantic conversations spanning continents in a single day, in no distant time. We've come to see ourselves make progress so much so that we've come to have different levels of surgeries. We've come to have surgeries that are currently under debate as it concerns the ethical stands of them. We've come to see ourselves make progress in terms of agriculture, in terms of transportation, in terms of publishing, in terms of ways of conveying an information and having an opinion that somebody in the Amazon can comfortably sit down in the comfort of whatsoever constitutes their settlement and apartment and come to assess such information. As such, we've also seen the rise and the advancements in chemistry, in physics, in the ways we eat food, in the ways we ordinarily come to see things and we come to do things. So that we've come to tell ourselves that we are so civil. But in our levels of civility and all of that, we still produce things so terrible in our chemical labs and our biology labs and in our laboratories that ordinarily shouldn't have seen the light of day. So that those in the dermatological industry, those who deal with skins and all that, have come to produce a whole lot of stuff that have come to change our coloration and our levels of pigment, and most of the times things that have left us more in pain, more in different levels of harm than good. We have also seen the rise of different ways of getting to commit eugenics, and so mercy killing have become a thing that have come down to us as almost possible. And so families opt in to have euthanasia without even seriously sitting down to have arguments or have conversations within themselves as it concerns what ordinarily should constitute the death of a person and how sacred should life be. We've come to have a whole lot of stuff down that particular line, conversations about abortions and them also taking their toll, and arguments about human rights and the woman's right has also been in conversation. People are asking, it's the woman's right. Some are saying it's the baby's right. Of whatever side you belong, it goes to say a whole lot of stuff about our times. It goes to say a whole lot of things. But at the same time, as we claim to be so civil, as we claim to be so progressive, we still live in times and find ourselves in times when people are so poor. People are so poor on many fronts. People are not living equal lives. People are not living the lives they ordinarily would want to live. So that certain countries are placed as first world countries, second world countries, top countries in the world, and other countries are left where they are left. And one begins to ask himself, from where to where to where, and for how long are we going to be the way we are before we make sense of our existence? So there's a place like Somalia is still being poor. It's still poor in the 21st century. So there's a place like Haiti has been the way it has been for years, in spanning more than a century, and we claim to not have solutions to such problems. So there's a place like the Caribbeans, particularly Barbados, would not ordinarily come to get the level of technology and advancement it ordinarily should have gotten. A thing that had led to a thing like the coconut revolution in the region, we saw that revolution and what ordinarily became of that revolution. A thing we sometimes don't even want to be told about it. We don't even want to be reminded of the many difficulties a whole lot of persons get to go through in living, in being, in responding to life, in trying to be humans. We don't want to be told. We don't even want to be reminded. But then we ought to remind ourselves of these many things, because amidst the advancements we've come to see ourselves get, different levels of imperialism is coming to take the forefront of our life, different ways of shutting down our hearts and shutting down our minds and shutting down our sinews. It's beginning to take the forefront of things. And so we ask ourselves, aren't we becoming so robotic in the ways we get to do things, in the ways we get to live, in the ways we get to respond to life and all that? Aren't we so ashamed of the levels of hostility we allow to come to those who ordinarily are as human as we are? What have come to constitute our cravings? What have come to constitute our levels of security and our levels of insecurity? And what has come to constitute the way we get to look at the next man? And I say this because we started from the whole idea of talking about a guy like Saddam Hussein. And the book here the title holds Saddam Hussein, An American Obsession. It was written by Andrew and Patrick. And you begin to ask yourself, what obsession did these guys, a country like America, had on a person like Hussein to see through the invasion of a country like his, up unto the point of wreaking havoc on the country and leaving the country where it ordinarily did, without really a clear explanation as to whether it was wrong or not. A thing I think the US ordinarily have not come to own up. A thing I think they ordinarily should get to own up. A thing difficult to even talk about, a conversation many persons don't ordinarily want to own up. And it goes a long way to talk about the many places a country like America has fought at, many places a country like that, the land of the free and land of the brave, have ordinarily not gotten it right. Right from the very beginning of its proclamation, we hold this truth to be self-evident. And the whole conversations that came around there as man being free and born with inalienable rights. Right about that statement, slavery was still going on. Slave owners still had people in their plantations. And you begin to ask yourself, do we really learn from history? Do we really learn from our lives? Do we learn from the things we get to do? Do we really learn from history at all? From the Gulf War and everything, what have we seen in our world that we can comfortably say we want to change? There are too many wars already fought, and less talks about peace. People are talking about military might. People are talking about how they need to be strong. People are talking about how they want to grow. People are talking about how they want to make progress. People are talking about how they want to make progress at the expense of the next people. People are talking about how they want to use the next girl, how they want to use the next guy in their relationship, how they just want to catch cruise. And you see how sad and we see how robotic we are becoming day in, day out, year in, year out. Because if you think you can ordinarily get to pretend to love a girl while you don't actually love the girl because you just want a couple of incentives from her and her life, and you think you can hit on a guy and think the guy will not get to ordinarily know what is in your heart, which is a thing he ordinarily would not be able to do, and then you get to tell yourself, he doesn't know, and then you get to leave such a guy in the situation you get to leave him, and you get to leave the girl in the situation you get to leave her. What becomes of such a person in the long run is the cultivation of an agnostic way of looking at life. That ordinarily all humans are the same because we are a product of our experience. We are a product of genes and the levels of mutation and the levels of variation that have come down to us from thousands of years before now. And so you get to ask yourself, what becomes of these people who have come to experience distrust, who have come to experience different levels of trepidation and different levels of heartbreaks and different levels of the confusion that can come from being used in a thing like a relationship? The answers are numerous. We've talked about the idea of being agnostic, the idea of being very skeptical of people, and the idea of being afraid of people. And it's a reality we now live in. People are afraid of people because people use people, and it doesn't make sense. Nobody wants to talk about love. Nobody wants to talk about companionship. Nobody wants to talk about friendship. And when you ask people what is a friend, what is friendship, you hear the most bizarre answers. You hear the most outrageous of claims as it concerns who a friend is. You ask somebody beyond the first layer of I have a friend, who is your friend? How long does it take to make a friend? How can you define a friend? And you hear them give you answers that leave you confused as to what ordinarily should be a friend. Because a friend, as far as I would want to hold, should be somebody who ordinarily wants your good, a lover or whatsoever. So that the classical definition of love as willing the good of the other should be the center stage of our modern life, but that is not the case. We live in times when we use people. Propaganda gets to take the forefront, blackmails and misinformation and disinformation and ill information are the things we get to see around us, around our life, around the things we get to do and how we get to live life and how we get to respond to life. And one begins to ask, from where to where to where? And how are we going to function going forward into an age where even AI has now become racist in many things? We ordinarily felt a thing like AI would ordinarily be neutral in its affairs with life, but no. Companies and banks are already making use of these tools, and they are being programmed as to what they ordinarily should do. They are being fed with information, they are being given data in a particular way, and so people get to apply for loans, apply for scholarships, apply for different admission programs, and don't see themselves making it, though they might be qualified. If we continue with this self-centered way of looking at life, these are self-centered way of growing, these are self-centered way of being, one begins to ask himself, from where to where to where? Because we are not making sense of our life down here, and we are not helping matters. The way we get to look at life, the way we get to go, the way we even get to grow, leaves us in want of love, in want of warmth, in want of care and attention. But we don't care, right? We don't want all of that, and we continue to be very, very artificial. And just like someone like Saddam Hussein was for almost every other accusation accused of this particular one wrongly of the possession of nuclear weapons. So also have we found ourselves in a day-to-day life being either accused of something or we accusing people of something. It's either we have been forced or cajoled to get to have some very crazy merchandise, and we as a people come down to be used as trade-offs so that different media and the platforms we get to log in get to trade off on our data and the things we get to like and the things we get to use. And you ask yourself, from where to where to where are we heading? I don't have the answers, but I know we are heading towards a disastrous end. We're heading towards a place where nobody would ordinarily want to listen to anybody. Nobody ordinarily would want to fall in love with anybody. Nobody would ordinarily want to have anything to do with anybody. Everybody would just want to be on their own. And we are going to be as sad as never before. The same way psychology got introduced right after the Second World War, because of the levels of depression people felt, we also have to start looking out for something more than what we have at the moment, because the level of loneliness and sadness that is going to hit our generation and our world in the near future, it is going to be alarming to the point whereby the levels and rates of suicides will be so much, the infant mortality rate will be so low, the levels of suffering and the levels of anguish and sadness and sorrow we would come to feel in our heart would be so much, thanks to the policies we get to make now, thanks to the many times we get to go and sit down in the UN and then get to say things ordinarily that don't meet and that don't even come to make sense. Thanks for the politics being played in places like this. Thanks for the different type of psychology we now practice now and the ways we now get to talk about uh, uh, gender and the theories that ordinarily we get to propound. Thanks to our economic models and our political models and the landscapes we get to have as playing fields, and a place where nobody ordinarily is treated as a human being. Everybody is treated as like a commodity. Going forward, we would come to ordinarily feel the scourge of what it means to be human from a different perspective, because we are struggling with crisis. We are having we are still having the meaning crisis. We'll not even recover from that particular one. We are still going forward, and so people continually ask themselves, what is meaning? What is life? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? How should I go about life? How shouldn't I go about life? What should I say? What shouldn't I say? How should I live? How shouldn't I live? So there's now like a model, there's now like a label, there's now like a manual where you go and pick up and read what to feel, how not to feel, who to talk to, who not to talk to, how to love, how not to love. And so we are finally here. The age of we living like robots. The age where critical thinking has been given a very bad name. You being bossy, you being arrogant. If you try to be critical in your analogies and ways of doing things, you being emotionless, you being as though you're psychedelic, you being everything than actually what it means to be critical. So that nobody wants to be reminded of the meaning crisis in life. Nobody wants to be told or asked what should they do to come out of their problem. Everybody just wants to be allowed in their shell and continue to lament and continue to wail and continue to scream the devil and continue to stink Satan in terms of their behaviors and all that. But we ought to be responsible. We ought to be responsible if we must function well here, if we must make sense of our life. It takes only the person who is responsible to come out of their problem. Because the way out of one's problem is through the problem. Those who run away from their problems don't get solutions. They run and the problem don't go away. People think if they run away from their problems and then they don't have anything to get to say, that ordinarily their life will get better. No, it's not going to get better from that particular perspective. It's only going to get better when we become so responsible. When we begin to tell ourselves that we wrong people and people wrong us, and we offend people and people offend us, and these things are bound to happen, but then we also are ready to forgive. But we also should demand justice, that we also are demanding accountability. that we also want people to own up to their problems and own up to the many ways they have come not to look at life. Because as much as we don't want to look at life from the very perspective we ordinarily should be looking at life, we come to live miserable lives down here. We come to remain sad. We come to remain annoyed for a very long time because we will just continue to hang around and tell ourselves these things will not work, these things will not work, because we feel to be responsible. Look at your life, look at my life, look at your family's current situation, look at mine, look at the problems we have in the world. Who do you think are the ones who cause the problem? The aliens, we don't even know if they exist, or those who live in Jupiter, we don't even know if they are there. What are the causes of the problems of our time? We, Homo sapiens, we who claim to be thinking animals, we who claim to be the thinking man, we who claim to be capable of love, we who claim to be capable of communication, we who claim to be capable of dialogue, we who claim to be capable of real-time conversations, we who claim to be these things. It is you and I that have caused the problems down here, either from our action or from our levels of inactions, from our level of irresponsibilities, or from the truth we refuse to say, or the truth we refuse to get to align ourselves with. Because you cannot tell me that those who go to a place like the United Nations, day in, day out, year in, year out, don't know what they ordinarily are doing down there. You don't want to tell me that they don't know the solutions to the problems of the world, and yet they still continue to renew their membership. You don't want to tell me that the United Nations and the charter it has come to have over the years don't know the problems in the world, except their hidden agendas, which many persons believe there are. You don't want to tell me that a place like the International Court of Justice don't ordinarily know the sanctions it ordinarily needs to level on countries that ordinarily go against human rights, as opposed to facing third world countries and sanctioning them beyond redemption. You don't want to tell me that we, in our individual lives, we don't ordinarily know what is best for us. And if we don't know what is best for us, why can't we ask those who know what is best for us? Because in as much as we continue to run from the real crux of our problems and the real things that have led us to be this lonely, that have led us to be this utilitarian in our output and in our outlook towards life, we crumble, we perish, we go sad, we go angry, we do all the things wrong than the things we're supposed to do right. And so tell me, should we continue the way we are going? Should we die off like this, constantly leaving people in pain and in suffering? Or should those who sit in the United Nations actually try to tell themselves truth, speak to power and be a little bit crazy? Because sometimes it can be very depressing being alive. It can be very depressing being alive in the sense that there are too many issues in the world, and as these issues continue to persist, many persons lose faith. Many persons give up on life. Many persons give up on the prospect of ordinarily being human. Many persons give up on the prospect of actually living life and living life well. Because people ask themselves serious questions. People ask themselves questions we don't want to even ask ourselves. People ask themselves all manner of questions in their way of life, in the way they get to perceive life, in the way they get to live, in the way they get to be bullied by life and by people. People ask themselves, what is the purpose of existence? What is the purpose of my life? Not from the deep nihilistic way of looking at things or existential crisis that many persons get to feel, but from the subtleties of life, from the very things that get to happen around. And so up until today, when you look at those in the Middle East and look at what their life have become, out of the decision taken by different countries, out of decisions taken outside their comfort zone, outside what they ordinarily want. You begin to ask yourself, what becomes of the child born in the midst of conflict? What becomes of the child whose father has been snuffed off by some bombs, by some machine guns and machetes? What becomes of these people's life? What becomes of our world if we tell ourselves that there's no way? Because I think there's a way out, and the way out is peace, and the way out is true, and the way out is responsibility, the way out is love, the way out is fairness on the side of people, the way out is kindness in our hearts. The way out is coming to understand that people are dying for curable diseases that they cannot ordinarily afford. So that such things begin to defeat medicine, such things begin to defeat the whole healthcare system. Such things begin to defeat what we have come to hear about a place and a thing like the pharmaceutical world and what they get to do in terms of producing medications and drugs and different things that get to keep us the way they get to keep us, far away from being sober. More and more being addicted to things we ordinarily shouldn't be addicted to. That's why I ask you, as I will always ask you, what should we do? How should we go? How should we live our life? How should we be down here? Should we just be living as if there's nothing? Should we just be hanging down here as though there's nothing to get out of our life? Because it can be very depressing being alive. It can be very depressing being here. And so when you look at probably why someone like B. Bandele died, you get to see the levels of depression people get to battle with. You get to look at somebody like Ernest Hemingway, and you get to look at Ernest Hemingway, and you get to understand how sad his life was, or the absurdities someone like Albert Camus churned out. You ask yourself, what is the point? You look at Jean-Paul Sartre, and you ask yourself, at what point are we ordinarily going to tell ourselves that probably we have failed ourselves irretrievably, probably we've betrayed our lives? For how can the rich watch the news? How can the rich come out of their houses, walk across the streets? They don't even do these things. That's why they distract themselves with vacations, and they distract themselves with different expeditions and different operas that ordinarily take them from the touch of the common man. Because after many deals must have been struck from one place of guilt or the other, from one place of exploitation or the other, leaving a great chunk of people dependent on them for probably the rest of their life. They go for amusement because that's the only way they can escape. Dostoevsky, who admonish us, if you must do good to yourself, don't lie, at least not to yourself. And we lie to ourselves so much that life is all fine. The life is all good, life is all smart, life is all enjoyable. And how true is that? How do we like that? How do we like the sound of such? I don't think that's the case. I don't think that is it. I think we can do better, we can grow better, we can stand strong. But it must be collective. It must be done collectively. Because never in the history of the world has a thing like cosmopolitanism been so famous and so in vogue than in our times. Never in the history of the world have we been so close to ourselves, no matter what we want to make of the closeness, than in our times. That you can sit down and you'll be listening to a boy who is from Africa talking to you, and I can be talking, not even knowing who is listening to me. I can tweet on X, and then somebody gets to read it in the US, so that I can upload a video on the internet, and somebody in Morocco gets to sit down and get to read it. get to listen to it, so that I can make a podcast and somebody from Toronto sit down and listens to me and probably gets to change his mind, and probably even out of changing his mind, write to me expressing how he feels as it concerns the possibility of me meeting him or her in the point of their needs. And yet it is this same time where we have things like Facebook friends, and we have things like Tinder, that we have different apps for connecting people, that we have Telegram, that we still have people not wanting to talk to each other, people being nervous around people being so afraid to be humans, people being so afraid to have opinions. But how can we even come to solve our problems when we don't bring our opinions before the forefront, when we don't bring our ideas together, when we don't look at things ordinarily the way they are, when we don't want to tell ourselves that we are here and our lives have been given to us just once and nothing else? Because we seem to be so scared of a lot of things. We seem to be so scared of a lot of people. We seem to be so scared of life itself. We seem to be so scared of things ordinarily that shouldn't be bothering us. And yet we go on as though we are fine. We go on as though everything is all good, everything is all perfect. Hi, hello. How are you? I'm fine. That's if we even get to say, how are you? As even if we even have to ask, how is the family? How are you coping? Because these things are now considered too private for people to get to ask. So that when you ask somebody, how is life going on for you, they feel taken aback. Why is he asking? What does he want to know? Why does he want to know? But it matters what people get to know about us. It matters what people get to think about us. It matters also how we feel. And we also should be willing and open to tell people. But no, we are plugged in. We have been shut out of ourselves and out of the interconnectedness of life. We have come to accept defeat, even when we shouldn't ordinarily do that. We have come to give ourselves different things that ordinarily will get to distract us, as opposed to the things ordinarily that should unite us. And so we have come to tell ourselves that excessive drinking is the key, excessive partying is the key. We've come to tell ourselves that if you don't go partying during the weekends, you are not living life. Forgetting that these policies were ordinarily made to keep the economy flowing, the economy flourishing. Because tell me which people would ordinarily come to believe in a thing like going to parties and going to clubs every weekend as a necessary tool for their happiness, as a necessary tool for feeling good and feeling happy. Tell me which generation ordinarily wants to make progress by making all manner and all forms of addiction and impurities the center of their life, and wanting to see that such a people ordinarily gets to function properly. I want to know. I don't know. But I think we've been badly deceived, and we've also allowed ourselves to be deceived. It's not a thing done to us. It's a thing we've allowed ourselves to happen. And so for the many wars happening around the world, for the many atrocities being committed on a daily basis, for the many lives being snuffed and taken out of existence into nothingness, as we've now come to have it, for the many times we've betrayed ourselves and betrayed other people's love and trust for us, for the many times we have betrayed nations and abused the rights of other people in the name of geopolitics, in the name of constitutions and sanctions and laws, as opposed to ordinarily what we should be doing. To such as many times we have done all of this, we have to close our face in shame because we have failed, not just ourselves. We have failed everything human. We have failed everything we ordinarily were supposed to hold dear. And as we fail even further. There's never been a time when we've used ourselves so much as we're using ourselves now. And it disturbs me on many fronts. Because how can we claim to be so cosmopolitan and be so scared of meeting people and be so scared of talking to people and become so nervous? How sad can we be? How sad. But that's our life. That is what we want. That is what we've got. And probably that's how we are going to continue for a very long time. Because being as cosmopolitan as we are, it is expected that we as a people should ordinarily come to function so well. That we as a people should ordinarily come to live happily. With all our technological advancement and the advances we've come to make. But no, capitalism has failed in many ways. Its promise of looking for products always to get to sell to people have left us where it has left us. And so we are now caught up in this world where we tell ourselves it is either about me, my family, my loved ones, and the immediate pleasure I can get, and the false sense of security I can get from wealth. And we do this to ourselves, to our own disadvantage. And we think it's all fine, and we think it's well. We think it's all good. We continue to die slowly, without really even coming to know it. And so you sit in buses, you ask people, what are they thinking by mere glancing through their eyes? You read their eyes without talking to them. You ask them, you ask yourself, what are they thinking about? You ask them, what are they doing? Who are they? How are they? And they cannot answer you because they are faceless people. Their faces have no expression. Ordinarily, you can get to tie to something. They look around, confused. They look around, and then they plug into themselves. And we also do that. So that times ordinarily where people should ordinarily have a conversation with people have been taken away by the obsession to listen and hear to other things, to hear other things, from music to almost every other thing than ordinarily what should be. Whatever becomes of our life down here, it should be the case that we have failed ourselves because we've not come to read a lot, we've not come to study the history of times and people so much. We've not come to understand our lives, we've not come to do things so well. We claim to be so advanced, we claim to be so civilized, but we aren't. We are but robots. We are but machines who feel so little, and Dostoevsky was right. Jean-Paul Sartre probably must have looked at life and seen to it that there's nothing in this place. Life is meaningless. And on trying to even look at life and on trying to even get to understand what life can mean, the next time somebody approaches you with a particular problem, don't laugh. Don't discuss such a person behind their back and look at them and tell them, oh, they are suffering. Oh, you are in pain. Yes, they are in pain, but you shouldn't make mockery out of that situation. Because the more you get to do, the more they get to shrink to themselves, and if they get to find out, even worse. And so we ordinarily should be open enough to get to meet people and get to try to understand people and try to get to have solutions for people's problem. We should be willing and open to want to talk to people and want to have conversations with them on many fronts. A thing we don't do, and so people ordinarily who have problems bring their problems to us, and then they run away. They go away because they don't see people wanting to have commitment. They don't see people wanting to have a real sense of purpose in the course of one's life. They don't see people ordinarily wanting to be calm, to be quiet, to be fine. They don't see people wanting to ordinarily do things well. And that is us. The way we get to treat people, the way we get to treat ourselves, the way we get to look at life, the way we get to look at things, leaving us constantly in pain, leaving us constantly confused, because our lives down here have become so deterministic. Our lives down here have become so different. Our lives down here have become so confusing, to say the least. And it stems from our levels of not paying attention to details, our levels of indecisions, our levels of hypocrisy, our levels of wanting to see things from different perspectives, as opposed to ordinarily the real search for truth. And I don't want everybody to be, I don't expect everybody to be so critical of life, and to be so open to the possibility of how things ordinarily should go. I don't expect us to have everybody thinking the same way. That's not what I'm looking for. I am looking for a world where peace will reign. A world where we will do away with all the wars we've come to be fighting. A world where we will do away with all our prejudices, our biases, our sadness, our sorrows, our levels of inequality, our levels of racist ideologies here and there, levels of tribalism, our levels of ethnicity, and how we get to clamp on the rights of other persons, how we want that people get to listen to us and to us alone, and without us ordinarily getting to listen to ourselves, how we don't want to function well, how we don't want to live life happily, how we die. How we die pretty much slowly. How we go down, 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 with little or nothing left for us. I am Biringkpa in Emeka. See you next time.